Hi, welcome both of you, Kaustav, Avantika.
Hi,
Own the
thank you.
Past is a very, very nascent organization, and we love our heritage, especially Calcutta, we love to death. And we're trying to create awareness and spread awareness about these old homes, which represent a very, very glorious yesterday. And we want people to be aware and to maybe keep it for whatever reasons. Maybe they're not monuments, but to preserve them. So we have here on our panel, we're starting a series of discussions about homeowners who have taken the leap of faith and done it. And I think they've done us proud. So we have here firstly, Avantika Jalan, who is a social entrepreneur and who has an expertise in sustainable agriculture and community using expertise in tea. Growing up in Calcutta, she developed a passionate love for Calcutta's heritage, and Avantika took over a beautiful house in Sadanand Road. And other people may see it crumbling, but she saw the beauty. It's called the Lal Baari. And if you see the pictures, you will understand how beautiful it is. I mean, if you look beyond the crumbling facade, and she intends to uplift it and reuse it. So reuse is an option. I'd like 2 minutes to talk about reuse. So it's very easy for us to tom-tom reuse and say that, why don't old homeowners reuse it? We must understand that they've come to hard times only because, they didn't have the expertise to do any business. They don't have the wherewithal to reuse. And they are nervous. So unless we show them the way, unless we handhold them, unless brave hearts like Avantika come forward, the reuse option, the heritage option is a kind of a gone case. Interviewing her will be Dr. Kaustav Bhattacharya. So he has, an amazing list of qualifications, and I'm going to look at my paper and read them out. So he has an abiding interest in history, films, culture, aesthetics, and literature. He writes independently for British and Indian publications, and he is a self-declared ardent Kolkata file, a Kolkata lover, and he loves heritage. I'm Vibha Mitra from Own the Past, and we're trying to own the past and pass it on to the future with pride to the future generations. So over to you, Kaustav, for you to conduct the interview with this dynamic young lady, Avantika Jalan.
Thank you, Viva.
Thank you.
Good evening and a warm welcome to Avantika and our viewers who will be watching this program. And Avantika, thanks a lot for agreeing to do this conversation with us. So,
Most welcome.
Firstly, lots of congratulations, felicitations on securing the ownership of the Red Baari on 18 Sadanand Road, where the choice was between demolition or conservation. A very stark choice. And you came along like a savior, or shall I say in an ornate language, a lady knight, saving the lovely edifice from obliteration. So how are you feeling about this feat being achieved? I'm sure it wasn't easy. And can you share a few insights for our viewers about this incredible journey?
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, this has been something that's, it's taken about a year or so for us to actually go through all of the process. So we acquired the building finally in October, and the work had really started in 21 November when I found out about the property being on sale and reached out to the owners, the Banerjee family, and it was really a nick of time kind of thing, because they had already found a developer, and they had waited for 4 years for someone to take the property and conserve it and not raise it. So my meeting with Mr. Banerjee was the last meeting he was willing to do before signing off the property. So actually, it's a big thank you to him for delaying the process for another month, because I was traveling and I had to tell him to wait for another month before I could even come and see the property. It's also something that their family was very, very conscious of. They didn't want to sell the building to a developer. They were wanting someone to come and preserve it. So it is twofold. It's not just me who is preserving it. It's also the family who had the tenacity to wait it out and look for somebody who would reuse it, or at least have a way to preserve it. So in that way, it's been a really nice experience. We have a very good relationship with the previous owners as well, and since we've just taken it over in October, we're just going over all of the legal stuff to really kind of be able to use it now and start all of the restoration work.
Thank you for this very impassioned response. And what I can detect in your response is your passion of heritage conservation. So can you tell our viewers about this debut, because this is your first step into the world of heritage conservation? Now, I can imagine belonging to an industrial family which has been in the business of tea planting and production for over 4 generations, dating back to the early 20th century, 1920s, that appreciation of heritage is second nature, comes naturally. We are very keen to hear about the roots of your love of heritage and the desire, more than just love, to participate actively in its conservation.
Yeah, that is actually a very, very good point you've raised, because we have grown up in a very, very old family, and we've always seen my grandmother and even my parents talk about how they have been over the years conserving and fixing our houses in Assam, which are original tea bungalows, probably more than 100 years old. So I was born in one of them. We still own those. And my great-grandfather was the one who really started tea. And he himself was a very, very, conscious of architecture and like what he was doing at the time, because he didn't want to buy tea estates. He wanted to build his own tea estates back in the day when, it was all the British. So we have some very, very interesting tea bungalows that we stay in, we live in, and we've been preserving. So architecture in general, like preservation, has been something that's just kind of always been part of our life growing up. And it's not something that I ever thought about so much till you presented this question to me. But it's definitely something that's not new as a concept. But the real reason why I've been so passionate about wanting to save a building is after I actually found out about the story of the house in Calcutta that we live in, which is a tragic story. And I was told by my grandmother that she had fought with the whole family to preserve the old building. It was a beautiful old building. And as it goes, her decisions were overruled, and the younger generation, mostly male members, went ahead and changed everything when she was traveling, and we lost a really beautiful building right where we stay now in Calcutta. So when that story came to light, I was probably in my teens, because I used to always point out other old buildings and always mention to my father that, oh, this is such a beautiful building, or like something would come down and I would always be like, oh, I wish they didn't do that. So they told me this story that, even our house used to be one of these. And since then, it's been something that I've been wanting to do to at least ensure that I have some part to play in saving at least one other building. So that's kind of my personal stake in it and why I was so kind of determined to do it. And the Red Baari happened to just fall in the lap, in the sense that the timing of it all just worked out in a way that it happened. Like, it was a bucket list thing, and I never really knew if it was going to be possible, but I do have my father to thank for the Red Baari to be reality, because he knew this was something that meant a lot to me, and when the time was right, he definitely supported me in making that decision.
Thank you for that very lovely personalized response. And as someone who spent a lot of his academic years, or I cut my academic teeth in a technique called storytelling or personalized narratives, and I can always sniff a good story of a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Now I wish to press the reset button, I'm being rather academic here, and go back to hear a slice of your life story. You do please to share some facets of your growing up in Calcutta. You attended Loreto School. You went to United States to do your undergrad and postgrad. You attended one of the prestigious business school, and then you came back to India and you became a very successful social entrepreneur. You were successful in promoting organic tea, which I would like to try someday. And you promoted social entrepreneurship. And if I may reveal, for many of our viewers, you have a few first to your credit, and including the launch of the first kombucha, am I saying it right? Kombucha brewery in Kolkata.
Kombucha.
And I can see the modest... Sorry?
I was just wondering if we were the first, but yeah, no, you're right. I think we were the first in Calcutta, not in India, but in Calcutta, yeah.
I could see that self-effacing modest smile, but my job here is to talk some of your achievements for the broader viewers. So can you please share a slice of your life for all of us to learn more about the journey?
Sure. So I was actually born in Assam. My first few years were on the tea estate. We moved pretty early on. My schooling has always been in Calcutta. Like you mentioned, I did my middle school in Loreto House. And then for my 11, 12, I was in CIS. But before Loreto House, I was actually in a small school called New Vista. And a lot of my core sensibilities actually come from New Vista, which was, it was a very, how to say, it for its time, it was a very, very futuristic school, because it included a lot of extracurricular activities and drama and a lot of arts and things like that. So my love for the arts and the humanities and a lot of the softer side of academics actually came from my initial years, like primary school years, because that's when I was most exposed to it. Since Loreto, I've been more focused in science. My undergrad was actually in neuroscience. So I actually attribute a lot of my love for heritage, love for history, culture to my primary education years. Having said that, in my last 2 years in Calcutta, I was very involved in photography, and we would just do a lot of photo walks around Calcutta and just explore the city just for fun with my friends. And I got to learn a lot about Calcutta then. And then over the years, I've really been studying sustainability, working in sustainability. So the idea of sustainability is something that is very fleeting. Like you can use the word in any sphere of life, and it can mean a whole different thing for business. It can mean a whole different thing for agriculture. It can mean a whole different thing in the arts. But it's something that has become a major part of how I think and how I just look at almost everything. And for me, it's become more of a thought process than a word that kind of defines a business or defines a product. I think I've skipped ahead a little bit, but in my formative years, I also spent a lot of time in rural India because we used to visit the tea estates, of course, and then for a period in the middle, my father was working with cotton in Madhya Pradesh. So there, I really got introduced to rural India, subsistence farming, a lot of handicrafts, culture in a different sense. We would visit the Maheshwar temple, which was really my first kind of heritage architecture that I got to appreciate and love, and like that's something like really imprinted in my head. So I think all of that adds up to what makes me who I am today and why I'm stepping into this new business, I would say, but like new area now.
There is something very interesting, and I wasn't prepared for this question. You keep mentioning your father. Obviously, he's a very inspiring figure. And for the viewers, I would like to mention that I had watched a video about the Jalan family and their tea production. And what came across about your father, which I like most, is his sense of humor. He has a sense of wit, which is very charming. So can you please tell us a little bit about this wonderful, inspiring figure in your life, and that's your own father?
This is a loaded question, and I don't know if I'll do it justice in a short answer. But so my father's name is Mrigen Jalan. He has been a pioneer in his own way in every field that he's worked in. He used to work in tea. He started his career in tea, and then he moved to spinning, and now he's back in tea. And he's been a pioneer in both sectors. He's always been someone who's been ahead of his times. His biggest accomplishment, I would say, has been introducing organic farming to India in the 90s. He created an organization called BioRay, and with his partners, and they really brought organic farming to the farm level. They had a whole organization working with farmers to teach them sustainable farming, not just organic farming. And because you mentioned like inspiration, that aspect of his work is where my inspiration for going into sustainability comes from. And he unfortunately lost his spinning mill. He's no longer working in that. But I kind of wanted to pick up a lot of things from where he had left and kind of work on it more. So I'm not answering your question directly because there's a lot more to him, and he has a lot of stories. He's worked closely with governments. He's had his own share of adventure with a lot of the Alpha movement in Assam. He's an industry leader in tea. So it's a whole different discussion. But my inspiration is he has always made us rooted to the ground. And for anyone who knows him, he meets the person where they are. It doesn't matter to him whether they're a farmer or a beggar or a industry head or whatever. So that is something that he's really ingrained in all of us, we are three of us, and I think that's something that's stuck the most, and he's kept us very, very on the ground and given us a very good reality check on life in many ways. So I think that's what inspires us most, that he can be everybody's friend, and a lot of, yeah, and I think I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. This response was exactly like a proud daughter of a very brilliant father. And that's what I needed. Thank you very much. It was, I think, one of the best parts of interviewing when people bring out their emotions and sensitivities. And I also happened to watch a very delightful presentation, which you made at your US Business School on marketing strategies for organic products. And you had mentioned that after returning to India, you had worked in the agricultural world. You belong to the agricultural world at the ground level, or what's called grassroots. Tell us a little bit more about it. What's your take on this whole grassroots experience, which I found very fascinating?
Just a small technical edit. It was not a business school program. It's a separate program called Masters of Development Practice. But yes, it was associated with the Haas School of Business. So just that. Could you be a little more specific on what about the grassroots you would like me to talk on?
Yeah, I mean, going into the agricultural world, living in the ground reality, in the grassroots. If I may say something, you went really, you were prepared, but it's encountering a very different world. After your undergrad studies, living in an urban setting, very comfortable. And grassroots is not just the physical, material reality, but the way people look at life, the way people think. How was it? I mean, I'm not making any presumption that it was different. Maybe it was not that different, or it was very different, but it's quite extraordinary that you ventured to do that experience. It's very important. It was not you were forced, but you volunteered to go and live in that world and experience the grassroots agricultural world.
Sure. Okay. I'll tell you what I was told before I entered by my father. So I was looking for jobs in the US after my undergrad, and every job I was interviewing for rejected me and said, and I was looking at environmental organization in America, and a lot of my interviews went all the way till the like the second round, and then they would basically say, what you want to do is actually in India, what you want to do is actually in a developing world. So that's kind of where I started talking to my father that, hey, I want to do this, so I'm going to move back. I don't think I can stay in America and do what I want to do. And and just mind you, before this, I had not interacted with him about any of on any of his work. Like, there was no adult conversation about what he had done and the cotton and all of that. So he told me, I remember the sentence, he said, it's great that you want to go into this world, but just know that once you enter it, you will not see the world the same way, and you will not connect with your friends in the same way. You will have a whole different dimension that you won't be able to unsee. And the reason I'm repeating that is exactly how I feel. And it is something that I would say everyone should experience, because it really does connect you to a different side of humanity and reality. So yes, grassroots in the physical way, everything you described was different. It was also exciting. It wasn't also that different for me because I've always, like I said, I was always in these rural areas as a kid. So it wasn't all that new, but yes, for the good 15, 20 years of my adult, childhood, growing up in school and stuff, I was definitely not connected to it. But it gave me a real sense of connection. Like I just loved meeting the people. It was happy. It didn't feel poor to me. It was something that really said that, you know, people can live sustainably if you just have systems around it. And that's kind of where this idea of wanting to keep things in a way that don't need outside intervention, that was the idea that I was trying to do through my company Mana, where I wanted to work with villages and have a sustainable system where they didn't have to go out, they didn't have to bring in outside, you know, like just small example, just like even the plastic cups and stuff like that. So it's been something that was very naive when I started. I've over the years obviously grown, and a lot of reality checks have come in, but still as a concept, I think rural India is very, very powerful, and something that also needs in some ways a lot of preservation. And I don't mean that from don't develop it, but a lot of systems, a lot of culture, a lot of things that are truly sustainable are being lost. And I think that's where my real passion came from. So in a second, I would go back to it. Like that's something that is definitely very dear to me.
You know, when I was hearing your response, it was something very intriguing that you set out with the spirit of adventure. You were warned, and you were not warned. Let's say you were told it's going to change you, it's going to dramatically transform you. You took a plunge, you come out, and you're very proud of that, and you recommend that experience to everyone. So, you know, let's say all kudos to that wonderful adventure or wonderful experience, and you're only enriching it. It's not that you have stopped. So that brings me to the next question, because it's connected, that, you know, I was very struck when I heard that presentation, two words which you used, quality and authenticity. Now, authenticity is such a distant concept in the world of social media and clicks. Nothing is authentic. The news, what you see. And as I recollect, you spoke about notion of trust, which is so fundamental in our daily life and especially in business. And can you please say a few words or elaborate on this notion? Because I thought it was a very philosophical idea which you were propounding. And also, I'm very curious when you talked about the idea of perceived quality. And how do you blend perceived quality with trust or authenticity? Because there is always a temptation when you are working in the sphere of perceived quality to have the perception very different than reality. And how do you always match it? Project an image of quality which may not be necessarily exactly authentic. And I thought, again, because I also work in this space in a very different setting, that is aesthetics the answer to blending perceived quality and authenticity?